Welcome to Ojas Oasis. This is a place where you will learn how to optimize your body, mind, and spirit in ways you have longed for a long time, perhaps your entire life. Our mission is to help you cultivate, nourish, and protect your ojas, your immunity, and inner peace. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited that we have Dr. Samarpan Buchalter here today on Ojas Oasis. Gosh, you could just see it all over my face. I've been a fan of your work and you as a person for years. I would love to jump right in and ask you about, well, first of all, hi.
Yeah,
Like, hi.
yeah, it's good to see you again. Yeah, it's just cool to see how our paths have just continued to cross in unique ways. So it's always nice to reconnect.
Yeah. So, okay. The first thing I want to ask you about is something that I know you're very comfortable talking about, which is your own journey with your own healing, which, like, many of us in the field of, I don't know, whether it's Ayurveda, yoga, any sort of Eastern philosophy or alternative framework, they call it alternative, but it's really the traditional modalities, the more ancient traditional modalities. We all have a story because it does take a high level, I should say, of curiosity, but also probably some personal vested interest in alternative medicine, which
Yes.
often is inspired by either your own suffering and and dissatisfaction with the options that were available to you at the time of whether it was an injury, which I know yours was, but where did it all begin for you? I would love to just open the floor to you to tell us about your journey with your healing your body, your mind, any and all the things that feel like they're worth mentioning. I mean, I know there's a lot. It's not like a an easy thing to answer, but anything that you feel inspired to share about your journey so far.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. It's I think kind of also just to summarize what you were saying is like whenever the conventional model doesn't work and it seems like that's the only option for most people. And whenever the conventional doesn't work, you have to go with more unconventional or traditional or alternative, whatever the adjective people want to use for it. You have to seek it through other means, or else you're just going to have to give up, and that's just not an option, especially whenever you're young and vibrant, or whenever you're older. And I don't think giving up's ever an option. But yeah, so for me, I started really young, being very physically active. I was in martial arts from the time I was 5 until about 12. Got to become a black belt, and yeah, second degree black belt in taekwondo by the time I was like 13. Was doing competitive martial arts, went from there into wrestling, and got really into that. Got to be on the varsity wrestling team and was going around doing training camps with different collegiate teams and whatnot. And basically with my background in taekwondo and now my experience in wrestling, I was approached by a mixed martial arts team to join them to start possibly professionally fighting. And right at that time is whenever I had my first major back injury, which was I sequestrated a disc and fractured a vertebra. So for people who don't know the progression of disc herniations, there's like the disc bulge, there's the herniation, there is like a major tear, and then the sequestration is like whenever, if you think about the disc as a jelly donut, it's whenever all the jelly inside the donut just spurts out into the spinal canal. And it is one of the worst feelings you could ever imagine. And I was 16 years young at that time. And so that happened during a wrestling practice. And my father, he's actually a pretty world renowned pain management physician who specialized in spine injuries. And unfortunately, no matter what he did, the epidurals, the anti-inflammatory steroids, all the stuff, everything short of surgery, it just wasn't working for me. It got me to the point where I could go and try to wrestle again, and then I ended up re-injuring it, same injury from a different level. And basically it just put me out of commission, and that stopped my mixed martial arts career and put me on the accelerated path for learning about healing and having to go and seek alternative means to heal myself. And that started off with chiropractic. I also, during that time, sustained like a labrum tear in my shoulder that I wrestled with throughout that time. And then when I was 18 years old, I had a near death experience where I was skateboarding going like 30 something miles per hour down a hill without a helmet on and thought I was invincible at 18. And I fell back and I cracked my skull and I bled in my brain in 6 places and lost my ability to smell and taste before that became a popular thing for people. And I lost my short-term memory, I couldn't handle loud noises or bright lights. I was forgetting things all the time. And I lost my internal monologue, which was a very interesting part of that. And I didn't know it at the time, but later it kind of was revealed to me. I lost my ability to cry and all sorts of other things that really deeply affected me. And through the journey of, first of all, anytime you come close to death at any point in your life before you actually die, it's a very powerful catalyst for just understanding the context of your mortality. There's no way to realize the value of life other than being in a position where it might be taken away from you. And that all culminated when basically whenever you have a brain injury, there is this thing called second impact syndrome, which is whenever you hit your head very badly, you have concussions or contusions, or like I had, you are in this very vulnerable state for several months, if not years, depending on the severity of the injury. That if you hit your head again to any degree, even especially if you were to hit it as hard, that your brain can swell. It has nowhere to go because it's in your skull and it's, a confined container, and it will swell to the point where you can bleed out and die. And about a month after my accident, I was trying to reclaim some normalcy in my life, and I went out paddleboarding and was just surfing like I used to. And I jumped off my board after catching this wave, and I went down and felt my feet hit the bottom, and I shot up to go to the surface, and I didn't realize my board was over my head, and I hit it as hard, if anything, close to my accident. So they told me I had 5 minutes to live if that happened. And
Wow.
so I paddled to shore, and I didn't have my phone on me, so I couldn't call my parents to say goodbye. My friends that were around were all drunk, and it was just not, I didn't have any way to escape that moment other than just to fully accept that I was going to die in that right there. And so at 18, I think it was probably the first moment I ever was so fully present that it changed my understanding of life. And obviously I didn't die, but a lot of complications arose from that. And the overcoming of that led to more investigative discovery of just what is it out there that I can use to heal myself if I'm not going to give up. And so I went a roundabout way of ending up in the healing fields. I actually initially tried to stray as far away from it as possible because
Mm-hmm.
my father was a doctor and my mother was a nurse. It wasn't like I was trying to take into the family business. However, I just kept having chronic debilitating pain, and I couldn't figure it out. And no one was really able to help me. And the only things that really gave me any relief were chiropractic initially. And then at some point, I kind of had this moment where I just couldn't continue onward, and I started doing yoga. And it was start off with Bikram yoga, and that again, it kind of gave me that familiar feeling of almost whenever I was dying on the beach, of that presence. And that just awoken me on a lot of levels, but particularly with the pain. And that just kind of led me down the rabbit hole. I ended up going to Indonesia to do my 200-hour yoga training in hatha yoga. And then I went to India eventually, to Rishikesh, and lived in the Himalayas in an ashram and did my 300-hour advanced training and stayed there for several months studying under a guru. And yeah, and then right after that, I went to chiropractic school, and the rest has just been an adventure of healing from all different realms, whether it was the yogic Indian perspective, like with Ayurveda, what you're talking about from your field of expertise, all the way down to working in the Amazon rainforest with legitimate shamans from isolated tribes that I'm now working with collaborative healthcare initiatives down there in Brazil. So it's taken me all over, from deep within to far, away from where I would normally call home, and here I am.
I mean, that's incredible. The fact that you did your yoga teacher training in India under a guru. I
Hmm.
mean, is there anything that you want to mention about your guru, that do you feel that his or her blessing was somehow with you through your healing journey? Like, did the guru give you some nugget of insight into what you needed to do to get your health back? Was that like a huge turning point for you in realizing that's chiropractic medicine is what I want to do? Because having two doctors, I mean, a doctor and a nurse as your parents, and then
Sure.
going to India, and right after India, going going to chiropractic school. I mean, I'm trying to connect the dots here of like
Yeah.
what was ignited within you when you went to India.
Yeah, it was funny. I was planning on. I already knew I was going to chiropractic school before I even did my first yoga teacher training. That was like
Okay.
the seeds were planted then. However, there was just I knew that for my own self to to know thyself, I needed to I needed to go that deep in order to really feel like I fully integrated on that level. So that way, as I was going through the depths of dedication that it would take to become a doctor, that I wouldn't lose myself. And I also knew that there was a deeper understanding of yoga, and also just going back to the roots. There's just so many times when people learn about things like, for example, like Buddhism or Taoism or Zen Buddhism, and they
Mm-hmm.
learn it through a filter of it coming to, let's just say they're from the United States. They learn it through a person that is of their culture here in their hometown, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And that's amazing because the lineage found you through somebody. And it's really important that it found you because obviously it's something that you resonate with and you would never have known about it. It's not like you were going to go to Japan or China or India just to go and, frolic around and then stumble upon it. It happens for some people, I'm sure. However, it's whenever a lineage finds you, it's really profound. And it's if you are and the idea of what the universe is like, you are seeking what you are seeking is also seeking you.
Totally.
And what was interesting was that my guru, so to speak, his name is Yoga Rishi Vishvaketu, and he was my first yoga teacher's guru, and I didn't know that at the time. So his lineage found me through her. And then I asked her when, like, years later, oh, where should I go do my yoga teacher training? And she's like, my friend in Bali. I went there and I didn't know it, but my guru was their teachers too. I was kind of following the
Wow.
lineage unknowingly. It's giving me goosebumps. And then I finally kind of put all the pieces together, and I realized, especially just with the timing, before I got fully committed into my doctorate program, I wanted to learn from the source. And I remember I was sitting in bed one night and I just shut up and I was like, I need to go to India. And I looked online, the training timelines aligned up. I called my dad in the middle of the night and like, hey, I think I need to go to India. And he's like, if you think this will help you in your path. And so, but to answer your question with my guru particularly, my name I feel like was the biggest gift that he gave me, which was, the full name is Samarpan Anand, which means the bliss of surrender. And when I went
Mm.
to India, I was obsessed with getting answers. I felt like I needed to desperately understand what I was learning so that way whenever I was around my colleagues in chiropractic school or in the medical field or wherever, that I could represent that body of knowledge in a way
Mm.
that not only did respect to my lineage, but also gave people insights that allowed for them to feel like it was something they could wrap their mind around. And so I was constantly asking questions to the point where it was almost neurotic. It definitely was neurotic. And so
Very pitta. Very pitta.
exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
whenever, and I didn't even know we were going to be receiving a name. And he ended up during the training, whenever you accept a lineage and you're going to take on the responsibility of carrying that flame onward, you have an opportunity to receive a name from your teacher. So he gave me that name, and it's been a wild journey transitioning from my original birth name, which was Brandon, to Samarpan Anand. And the time in between names was probably the most interesting because you start to realize you start to lose your identity, and by losing your identity, you can kind of dissolve your ego a bit to see yourself
Yes.
throughout the
By
whole.
losing your identity, you're more free to be
Right.
who you really are.
Yeah. So some people in my old life call me Brandon. Like some people call me Samarpan, and I just feel nameless. And whatever noise people want to make at me, so be it.
Yeah. Did you legally change it though?
Not yet, but it's
Okay.
something I've considered just because I use it so much, and I don't use Brandon at all. So maybe one
Hmm.
day.
It's so funny because I always loved the name Brandon.
Mm.
I don't have any Brandons in my life, but I remember as a kid just like I must have met someone named Brandon, or there was like a movie character or something. But I've always loved that name, but it's so ironic though that like you're trying to get away from that name. And it's like one of my favorite male names. But Samarpan Anand is obviously, now knowing the full story behind it, it's perfect for you. It's absolutely perfect for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just at some point you just can't fight life. It's not You're not
Yeah.
going to win that fight. You can't fight pain. You can't If you try to be anti anything, you're going to maintain and sustain whatever you're fighting. So, and I try to tell my patients that too. I had a young woman in here today who just told me she felt like she's at war with her body constantly. And I was like, listen, that's one war you're definitely never going to win. And a lot of times it just takes accepting, fully surrendering to whatever is in front of you and finding a way to restore harmony. It's not about the battle. It's, most of our
Mm.
culture, the idea of surrender is so tied into failure and giving up or being defeated. And
Settling,
yeah,
settling.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah,
So for me, it's just the bliss of surrender, the just being able to relax into life and knowing and trusting that it's going to work out for you, even if it's terribly uncomfortable. It's a really important virtue. And I had no idea about the aspects of surrender until I embodied that name. And especially whenever you go through a doctorate program, there's so much surrender needed, or else you'll go crazy.
oh my
It's just
gosh.
every day you're being met with challenges and identity crisis, and there's too much to try to force your way through. You have to surrender at some point and just trust life will guide you there and take care of you.
Absolutely. Well, you're wearing the Cairo yoga shirt, which is the perfect kind of helps me segue into asking
Yeah.
you about what exactly is Cairo yoga, because that is your Instagram handle. I know that's the name of your practice, and it's very very like it's very catchy. It sticks. It has a very it rolls off the tongue. It's super um intriguing because obviously I can recognize chiropractic.
Mm.
So tell us about your trademarked style of practicing chiropractic medicine. Obviously, there's yoga is a huge aspect not only to the way that you work, but who you are as a person. Having is it 500 hours total of yoga teacher training in India?
Yeah, so 200 in
Or
Indonesian and 300 in, yeah, so
yeah,
the advanced
okay.
and whatnot. So yeah,
So
500
500.
total.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
training.
Yeah, so Chiro Yoga developed from I was a anatomy tutor in chiropractic school, so I was teaching the younger quarters that were coming in the anatomy lab with the cadavers, and I would do lectures to break down the concepts. And then when I was in chiropractic school, there were clubs on campus, but the yoga club had died out a few years ago for some reason, and so I recognized an opportunity to restart and being able to again practice sharing what I learned and translating that from the lineage that I came from in India to now my peers in Northern California, and being able to share that to up and coming doctors, because the biggest misconception about yoga as a modality of healing is that it's just yoga. That it's almost like if you had a headache, I'm like, oh, Sasha, you know what you should do? You should go take some medicine. That'd be really good
Mm.
for you. It's like, all right, should I take like
Thank
a
you.
laxative? Should I
Yeah.
take an opioid? Like it's such a generic term that people don't understand that. And so what ends up happening is that doctors will, good and like all good intentions, tell their patients to go do yoga. and their patient, not knowing, will go take a hot Ashtanga class, or they'll go, it could be anything from the most intense yoga to the most peaceful restorative thing, and there's no way for medical doctors or any kind of doctor to know that if they've never immersed themselves in the practice. So I felt it was my duty to educate my peers about what yoga is. And what I would do, I started tying in an anatomical, my anatomy lecture material into the yoga practice. And I'd open the course up with just being like, hey, let's talk about the hips. Let's talk about the anterior, posterior, lateral ligaments. Let's talk about the range of motion. Let's talk about its links with the lumbar spine. And then I would develop a class based off of the anatomy that we were studying as a group together. And so it started being inspired by that. And then every time I'd go take a seminar or I'd go do continuing education of some sort, I would learn new movements and I would incorporate them into my own practice, because you have to remember I'm actively healing myself throughout chiropractic. So it's probably the most back pain I've ever had, which is the
Wow.
most frustrating thing you could ever imagine, is being in a building with 350 plus chiropractors or chiropractic students and your back hurts and you can't find relief.
Oh
And
my gosh.
so, yeah,
Oh my
it,
and your father is a specialist in pain management.
right. Yeah. So
Like,
the irony is
yeah,
is delicious for me. So I,
it's delicious. Yeah, spiritually it's like, wow.
yeah.
All these carrots being dangled in front of you and none of them are the carrot. Like they're not even carrots. They're just like optical
Yeah.
illusions of carrots, but they're not actually helping.
Yeah, and it was really important for me to have that, because I would go to these, I would go train and specialize in mobility, and I'd learn about what it actually means to train joints by a joint by joint basis, and then I'd go and study fascia and understanding the global concepts of fascial tensegrity, which is how your body maintains its balance and the circulation of water through your system. And then I'd go study Russian strength training concepts, and I just kept going into all these rabbit holes that I was exposed to. And especially after chiropractic school, I went and did my residency under one of the best clinics in the country, LA Sport and Spine. And my mentor, Dr. Roy Page, just blew my mind by exposing me to even more. And he comes from a acupuncture, like he's an acupuncturist and a chiropractor and a strength training performance coach. So all these different things just kept coming at me, and all I would do is just practice it myself and distill it down and try to get the golden nugget of it, and I would incorporate it into the practice somehow. So Kara yoga, for me, if I were to define it in my most honest sense, is it is the most refined and consolidated version of what I know to this point. And it's meant to be a prescriptive in its highest sense. If I have someone working with me, I can make a prescription yoga class for them that incorporates mobility, incorporates strength, and incorporates fascial stretching concepts. It weaves it in with the mindfulness and the yoga that I've learned from India, Indonesia, all these different backgrounds, and becomes this adaptive practice that's made for you. And in a more generic sense, it is a movement journey that's guided by mindfulness with the overarching concepts of yoga and the principles of anatomy and physiology guiding it.
Plus, you are your own case study.
Yeah.
Like it worked for you, which I mean, that's all you don't even need to sell it because it's like, look, I had a case that my own, team of all these pain management specialists, they weren't able to figure it out. So you had to put together your own treatment plan basically, right? Like you had to study yourself and integrate. It's just so interesting. It's so cool how Dharma puts us exactly like you said, what we need, who we need to be around, gives us the exact types of frustration, the exact types of pain that we need so that we figure out a model of healing that will help so many other people. Oftentimes, shamans have to go through these insane initiations
Yeah.
before they're even allowed to be transferred the powers. And I know you spent a lot of time in the Amazon, and this is like totally in your wheelhouse of lingo here. So if you want to go there too and talk a little bit about how your time, I mean, what brought you to that leg of the woods also, and how that's
Yeah.
been playing out in your practice in the West as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say this, like to touch on what you just said as well, is like the best way to get to where you really learn something is being desperate. I was desperate. You know, every professor I had, I tried to get adjusted by them. You know, I have been adjusted by every kind of adjusting system and practitioner, and everything from very light touch to the most aggressive things. And if you aren't desperate enough, it's hard to be driven to go to the lengths that, not even to say that I'm like some special case, but it's just like it drove me to the edge of the world in some cases to really pursue that, because until you really understand what it means to heal, it's hard to take people there. It's almost like if you're like, I kind of make this analogy with people that are wanting to be guided by others. It's like
Tour
if you
guides. I do the same thing. I do
yeah,
the exact same analogy with people.
yeah, like if you want to get to the top of the mountain, like it helps to have someone that's been to the top of the mountain. And if you want to go further along the path, like just find someone further along, even if they're a few steps ahead of you. That's important. It's not to dismiss that. It's not like you have to be enlightened to teach anybody anything. But I know I've been down many trails and up many mountains and down some because I realized that wasn't the right one and blah blah blah. And so
Exactly.
it feels like you have to through experience, because it doesn't matter how many case studies or you know, evidence-based research articles, whatever you want to do, peer review this, whatever. It's like it comes down to the person in front of you and your own experience of what worked for you. And so it just, you know, you can't escape that component of it. And it's hard because I met people in chiropractic school that had never been injured, and they never,
Right.
and some of them had never even been treated by a chiropractor. And I'm like, what do you, like, it's not that you can't be here, but what are you doing here? You know,
Right.
it's like that. I don't know. It's like that experiential buy-in wasn't there. So it was like, you must be motivated by something else. Maybe it's performance, maybe it's like business, whatever. So but yeah, so to segue into the Amazon, it's a long story, but the long story short was, before I was a chiropractor, I was an international event manager and was invited to be one of the workers for the World Indigenous Games. It was the first ever Olympic Games for like all of the tribes in the world. I say all because, you know, every continent was represented. I believe there was over 36 different tribes there, and six of which, or maybe more, or no, sorry, 24 of which were from the Amazon. So spattered through all about Brazil, Peru, yeah, all throughout the Amazon. And so basically, that was in Brazil. And when I went down there, I had the opportunity to be the personal assistant and translator for the Native American delegation and the Maori people of New Zealand. And through that, I ended up getting introduced to these tribes from the Amazon. And one of them ended up inviting myself and this girl that I had met to go and live with them in the rainforest for a few weeks. And that experience changed everything, because from there, I got to really see what the role of a shaman is. You know,
Hmm.
it's not just a person that you intermittently know that you have to go to whenever this happened. Like, they're a part of every aspect of life. They are there from the beginning to the end, and they're the people that have been protecting their communities in many different ways for thousands of years, and it's all through a oral tradition. So it was very perspective shifting being in a hut full of beautifully profound people that have this connection to their environment, so much so that, you know, every plant has a spirit. They know what to do, the protocols. There's so much that goes into shamanism, and that initiation, like you were saying earlier, is so extensive. I mean, it takes decades for some of these traditions to fully initiate a shaman into being someone who's capable of leading the community. And there's an amazing book called The Shaman's Apprentice. If you ever get a chance to read it,
Mm.
it's
Mm.
powerful, but kind of summarizes a lot of that.
This is what I think one of the things the general public, might not understand about the nature of the work that we do is that it's not just a one way decision to start studying Ayurveda or start studying plant medicine or you know, one day you wake up and you're just a healer. That's just not how it works.
Yeah.
I've never met a healer, a real one, one that heals,
Yeah.
What makes someone a healer is their ability to heal.
Right.
It's not an ego identity. It's not a label. It's not, I don't identify as a healer,
Sure.
but someone becomes a healer when just the actual verb, it's like you're doing it. You're doing the studying and the practicing, and you're applying your own experience, and everything goes together. Then obviously the knowledge of the body, the knowledge of the studying the actual medicine that you're giving them. I don't know if you actually work as a chiropractic doctor. Do you work with pharmaceutical medicines? Do you work with, you don't prescribe anything, right?
Supplements and
Supplements.
nutrition. I work a lot with nutrition and
I want to ask you about that too. But
yeah,
I just wanted to close the thought loop on what you were
yeah,
saying
sure.
about, you know, everything to me across the board. I mean, I am so passionate about integrating all of the medicines together, all of the different indigenous medicines from across the world that have been lost over thousands of years of colonization and uh, whitewashing and uh, brain. I can also say just brainwashing people into forgetting how powerful their bodies are to heal themselves.
Yeah,
And I've said this from the very beginning. When I chose Ayurveda, it was Ayurveda that chose me first.
sure.
Because I've always, since the beginning of my life, saw the sacredness of life, and I've seen it in nature, and you see it within yourself if you spend enough time alone, and you're able to go inside of yourself, and God is there. God isn't some pie in the sky outside. It's all in you.
Sure.
It's just accessing it that I think sometimes people don't remember or realize, that your capacity to heal, it's all here. And what these ancient modalities that we've both practiced, as well as how you've integrated into a Western medicine model with chiropractic,
Yeah.
they all work together like a symphony to me. Like they're all different instruments playing a really, really beautiful song.
Yeah.
And I really do see a very near future, where you and I, people like us, in our own fields, we're not in our own little bubble doing our work. We're like talking together, like we have a way to share the medicine and integrate all the different, because the chiropractic can do things that Ayurveda doesn't do. Yoga obviously goes hand in hand as the system of the Vedas with Ayurveda. So Ayurveda and yoga are sister sciences, but you've created Chiro Yoga, which you've married to, like Western and Eastern together in a really beautiful way. So you've created like a family between the two already.
Hmm.
Um, but I really see all of it working together, and I just want to perhaps offer my, what do I want to say? It's like I want to not qualify, because you're already you're more than qualified to make your own statements about
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
makes somebody a very effective shaman or doctor or healer. But obviously, when you study among other classmates, and you see, and you go out into the, if you're traveling and you're meeting people, and I was at a conference recently with like 400 different Ayurvedic practitioners. People are so different and unique, and everyone's been brought to either, whether it's the ayahuascas of the world, or the psilocybins, or the Ayurveda, or the yoga, or whatever it would have been for you, obviously, because it was a spinal injury. You needed chiropractic medicine. You needed something very specific that was like so all about aligning the spine. Um, but then you also obviously you had a spiritual hunger too, which brought you to the
Yeah.
East.
Well, it's
Um,
yeah. I mean, it's you if you work with people long enough and you are open enough, you'll see the spiritual stuff happen, you know. And I mean, the word spiritual, unfortunately, like, has been so stigmatized because we in our culture have basically ruled that out as a relevant factor. And if you want to really kind of categorize our the healing modalities of the world, you can put them in two. There's the pathogenic model, which is we need to seek and destroy disease. Anything that is wrong with the body needs to be controlled, and it does not have its ability to do it, so we need to do it to it. And then there's the salutogenic portion, which is like a new buzzword maybe some people haven't heard. But salutogenesis is the promotion of health. And it is a model that is made to enhance and uphold the innate systems of the body. And the innate is a
uh,
term in chiropractic that is also polarizing because the original the founding father of chiropractic, D.D. Palmer, he, you know, basically assimilated chiropractic practices from magnetic healing, from different spiritual healing practices. I mean, back in this was 1897. This was right after the Civil War, whenever the whole country in the United States was completely divided. There was no federal government. There was basically things were just kind of coming back together. There wasn't an authority like the American Medical Association that ruled over all. And you know, doctors back then, in the turn of the Civil War, were basically qualified on if you could read or not. That was what made you a doctor, capable of being a
wow.
doctor. And then, you know, it started off as, you know, amputations in the Civil War, and then they kind of started becoming adamant about germ theory, and then, you know, the Rockefellers and whatnot got into the pharmaceuticals, and you know,
Ooh,
yeah,
that's a
so
juicy
much.
topic that I
Yeah,
don't know if many people know about.
yeah. I mean, if you want to
Yeah.
read a book, that's, you know, that will kind of tell you all about that. It's Rockefeller Medicine Man, and that's from the Rockefeller archives themselves. So, you know, there's been a marrying of capitalistic and corporate interest into the healing fields, but you know, kind of to sway back what we were saying, is just the real healing is multidimensional, multifactorial. It's there's so many different levels, and what really inspired me to get these skills is that, you know, after my near death experience, and I was given this second chance at life, I realized that, you know, I need to heal. So what if I want to do anything significant in this world, it doesn't just start by like going and trying to fix the environment, because the environment has its own mechanisms of taking care of itself. But obviously people are out of alignment with those mechanisms and those and the way of which we were participating in the food chains and whatnot. So we have to look at the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, communal factors of healing. And for me, I wanted to get skills that could address each one of those factors in different capacities. And, you know, we all have to start where our culture is, because that's what we know.
Mm,
So in our culture, there's only so many options. You know, there's the medical model, which is the allopathic, traditional, pathogenic. And then there's kind of everything else. And everything else comes from different lineages, from, you know, acupuncture, from Oriental medicines, and then Ayurveda. And then, you know, people are just now becoming really aware of the richness of what indigenous medicine is. And unfortunately, a lot of that is coming through the form of plant medicines, which have obviously gotten our attention because we have lost our own shamanistic roots as a culture, because we were indigenous people, we were tribal people. And I went to a major research conference and was able to participate in a way that they did a global analysis of alternative and integrative healthcare. And there's so many practitioners out there that are against the idea of using herbs or other traditional means of treating things that are proven through research to be as effective, if not more so, with less side effects as some of these medications they're prescribing. But they have an aversion because it's an herb. And I stood up and had an opportunity to kind of ask my question out loud. But, you know, it's we have a form of anthropologic amnesia. We've forgotten our roots. We forgot where
mm,
this all came from. And I gave them the example of physical therapy. So physical therapy came from these doctors in Eastern Europe that were basically, but whenever the Cold War was happening, there was the Iron Curtain down between the East and the West, and the Russians and the Soviets and all those people were working on and developing their own systems of healing. And these doctors, one of them, his name was Yurgi. There was a few others that basically were in the process of consolidating what they were going to create as modern day physical therapy. And the lineages that they took from, one of them, Yurgi, went to India to study yoga. And so he went and studied that. And there was another one of them that went and studied Moshishiva, which is a shamanistic tradition from Eastern Europe that used manual therapy to open up energy channels for fertility. And they took
Wow.
yoga and Moshishiva, and they took the essence of it along with their understanding of biomechanics and physiology, and they created modern day physical therapy without citing their sources. Then the Iron Curtain falls, and they have this nice, pretty package of what physical therapy is. So
Wow.
even in our culture are the remnants, if not the pure essence of a lot of these ancient teachings, but repackaged and repurposed. Like chiropractic is bone setting techniques that I've seen in the Amazon from other tribes that I've
Totally.
never had contact with and never had contact with chiropractic, but everyone with hands figured out something to help each other with. And some of them have really developed sophisticated methods, and some of them have really sophisticated understandings of the herbs. Some of them really got into the spirits, and some of them all of it. And it's gotten consolidated over thousands of years because as long as we exist in relationship to the environment, to gravity, to the things that we need to eat and sustain ourselves. And
Mm.
we are born and we live and we die. And how we live and die is the art of being able to navigate your incarnation. And however many of those you have, who knows? But it comes down to what is your cultural exposure? How can you navigate that to find the thing that's going to actually help you? And then it's your responsibility, in my opinion, to be able to facilitate that for other people, because if not, then you lose that lineage and people get lost. And I spent a
Oh.
good 15 years of my life, which is half at this point, of trying to do my best to get out of pain. And here I am,
Mm.
and I'm not near the end of my journey of learning things, but my intention is to distill it and save people the trouble of having to become a doctor or go to the Amazon or go to India to just figure out how to be comfortable. It's unbelievable that it took so long, but here I am.
Yeah, I'm getting a little emotional listening to you because probably because I see myself in you, you know? I see that quality of the purity of what gosh, here it goes. Um the purity is just really beautiful and really stunning of your soul.
Uh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I really resonate with the desire, just like this really, really strong desire to save people from unnecessary suffering and help them if you found some shortcuts along your way through the abyss of all the pain that you've suffered, all the pain, physical, psychological, spiritual, emotional, I mean, all of it.
yeah,
It's so rewarding when you see a patient and you're able to get them out in a couple of weeks, sometimes in a couple of minutes. I
yeah,
know in chiropractic, sometimes it's literally just like you just crack something the right way and you just open up their whole Sushumna Nadi just opens up and you start, the chakras start spinning correctly and flowing and people are able to feel things that were blocked or, you know, the fear can close people up, fear in and of itself. So freeing people of that is a really beautiful thing, after because you know exactly what you've just opened up to them, which is life. You've given them life back.
yeah. Well, and I think the most important thing, like whenever I teach my workshops and do my public speaking, is that I do a very good job at convincing people of how perfect their body is, because it's not by accident. Like every single step you take, everything that happens to you, your body is constantly responding and to everything that happens to it and through it. And consistency is the language of the body. And you have to understand, like, this is a nonverbal entity that you're embodying, and it's a bunch of different communities. Like, I don't like the thing organ systems. Like, it makes it sound like
Hmm.
there's like a bunch of pipes and like
I
ears
know.
you know, it's communities
The
and like,
language is not very poetic in the West, but in
yeah,
Sanskrit, oh,
yeah.
it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's, you know, they use like terms like her, like, you know, pronouns and stuff whenever you're talking about the heart and the liver. And there is, you know, whenever you're talking about acupuncture, like, there's emotions that are associated with different organ systems. Like
Yes.
grief is with the lungs, and
Hmm.
you know, so there's so much perfection in the way that your body has been created and sustains itself. And like the example I give is when you take a step, electricity, something called piezoelectric energy, is the transference of physical force into electricity. When you take a step and your foot hits the ground, if you were to chop your bone in half long ways, and you see all those little things that are the trabeculae is what they're called, the internal scaffolding of your bone, every time you take a step, electricity is shot through those different branches of the trabeculae, which are maintained by osteoblasts and osteoclasts. The blasts create bone, the clasts destroy it. And every step, they are listening for the consistent inputs of where is the electricity flowing. Is it in this branch, or is it in this one? If not, let's get rid of this one. If this one, let's reinforce it.
Mm.
And so you can, through a very direct and intentional way, restructure and communicate with the innate systems of your body to create a more resilient structure. And so, I mean, I just left the gym, and like, again, with knowing my history, you would think I'm not lifting a lot of weights, but I can deadlift over 300 pounds now. It took me time, and I definitely had more share. I had my fair share of learning with consequences along the way, but you have to reframe everything. You can't look at it as something that this is my bad this or that's my bad that. No, it's like, this is where my opportunities are. There is an innate lesson held within this sacredly perfect thing, a part of me. How can I listen? And who can I partner with as a translator of the nonverbal communication of my body? That's what a doctor is, in its purest sense, is a nonverbal communication translation specialist that can help you understand what it is saying. Because all orthopedic tests, all blood tests, every time you hurt and I tell you to do this, move there, move this, and I'm touching and I'm feeling, I'm getting nonverbal communication from your body. And
Mm.
you are not trained to understand that. And that's fair. You don't want to spend your whole life just trying to get your body in order. So you have people that partner with you. And if there's people that in their position of power plant the idea in your head that something is wrong, that you will not get better, that you are going to remain this way, you can never walk again, you can never this again, then they have successfully put a false limiting belief inside of you. And until you come to someone like myself, or someone else that has that capacity to recognize the power of placebo instead of nocebo, you can get people to remember, like I just described with that that process with your bone, how perfect everything is. It's not by accident, and it's very strategic, and it knows exactly what's going on. And then you add the layers of emotion and spiritual energy and all this other stuff, and you see how it's a perfect symphony. And if you forget that, then of course you're going to go to a model that makes you believe that you have lost your power, that you have to do something from the outside in to be able to correct this dysfunctional, stupid thing that obviously has no idea what it's doing. You know what I mean? It's
Yes.
it's you have to shift that drastically. And so my whole lecture is just convincing people that you're perfect, appreciate your body. The more gratitude you have, the more it's going to reciprocate that. Find ways to love yourself every single day. Go through every single part of you and thank it. Because if you don't, imagine if you're in a relationship with another person and you treated them in the way that you might treat your knee that you hit, you know, you had an accident with in high school sports or something. You know, you're never going to shame something into being better. You have to love
Mm.
it, and you have to find appreciation for where it's at. You have to find the message in the healing, and you know, you have to believe that it's going to get better, because your belief is ultimately what's going to lead it forward.
Nourishment, right?
Yeah,
That's a word that just came up for me when you were talking about the way that we treat weaknesses, whether it's due to injury or whether we've just been taught that by people with authority, whether that was our parents or our doctors or our teachers or our mentors or our friends, whoever it was. You know, we also we as you know at a from a certain, until a certain age, those sources of influence are assigned to us karmically.
Mm.
But then as soon as you have that awakening moment, like you've had awakening moments in your life of your own mortality, realizing, okay, I have 5 minutes to live. Oh my gosh, like having everything be put into perspective. And then you realize, wait, why am I assigning that power? I I can consciously not anymore assign this person the authority on my health. I can be the authority. And we say this in Ayurveda too. We say you are your own healer. The divine healer lives within us all.
Yeah, I mean the power that created the body can heal it. And it's funny how, we forget it, and it's fine, it happens. And we have this journey of remembrance, and that's ultimately what life's about. And believe me, it's painful at times, and it's severely uncomfortable. Some of the things I do with people are very uncomfortable, and sometimes you need to throw something in the mix that's a catalyst that's going to shift the pattern that has developed, that was strategic at one point. No matter what's going on, it was a strategic adaptation to whatever was happening. And if it needed to be there to get you through a moment where you weren't going to possibly survive if it wasn't there otherwise, then so be it. But that pattern now is not functional. It's not being a conducive part of what you see as your vision for your body moving forward. So another kind of layer to my role is I need to be able to recognize patterns, and through recognizing patterns, see how I can substitute them for the ones that you were hoping for, and do that in a way that the body doesn't totally lose itself in the mix, and freeze up and try to prevent it from being able to go gracefully into that direction. So it's a lot of being really honest with people, understanding what their goals are, understanding what their intention is from wanting to work with me in the beginning. And it's a collaboration. I'm going to be as
Totally.
objective as possible. And if it's not working, like, let's go back to the drawing board and figure it out, because you are unique, and I only get so much time to know about you. And I do a really good job, I think, interrogating people about what what's going on. But
You've given me an adjustment before. You're really good.
oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're really good. Where's your level of pain these days? How are you, like 100% fully pain free now, or do you still manage some chronicity with your back?
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, I just literally I walked in here and got on the computer after, like, I'm in a training phase right now. I'm preparing for a barbell instructor certification. So I just did like 5 sets of 255-pound deadlifts for 5 reps, and that's just like week 3 or 4 of my training out of 10. So I'm working up to do a double body weight deadlift at 340 pounds. And
Wow.
so
Wow.
yeah, and this is unknown territory for me, because I've only got up to 300, and I'm pushing my limits. And so the way that to answer your question straight up, like, I still experience pain, is definitely changing. The aspects of the pain, the qualitative differences are very clear to me, and I know my patterns. And what now, like, basically the way I kind of tell people whenever they start with me, there's 2 lines on the same chart. There's pain and there's your functional movement capacity, right? So your pain might be up here throughout the whole time, but your movement capacity is increasing. And that's a win. You have been able to, even though your pain's still there, and pain is its own animal. Like, it's got so many layers to it. A lot of it's psychological, emotional, and then there's also just the neurological conditioning of teaching the body that it's safe to do things that it never thought it could. So pain can be the same, and functionality can increase, and that's a win. Functionality and pain, functionality going up and pain decreasing, that's ideal. And sometimes your functionality increases, and then all of a sudden you have a spike of pain. And again, like, it's an adaptive process. If
Mm,
you Like, the analogy I give people is, like, if you're a carpenter and you're using a hammer, the first day that you've ever used a hammer, you have to use it all day. If you use it too much, you'll get a blister. But if you
mm,
use it just enough to catalyze the body into recognizing, again, through consistency, I'm picking up the
yes.
hammer today, I'm picking it up tomorrow, I'm picking it up the next day, I'll end up getting calluses like these.
Right.
So,
Protective barriers.
right.
Hmm.
But you have to hit a threshold where you cause enough failure of the tissues they have to break down. I mean, that's what exercising is. It's tearing muscle fibers on a
Yep.
microscopic level and then the protein comes in and reinforces them because it's preparing for the next time it's going to happen.
Mm.
So through the levels of adaptation that you go through, pain can be part of it, but it's the context of pain that matters the most, and it is knowing the history of where you're at. And also, if you're learning a new skill, you have to expect some level of learning with consequences. And it might be pain or it might be something else or whatever it is. But, for me, like my pain is my friend. I love it. It's taught me the most. It has driven me to the desperate to the point of desperation to where I'm now at where I am. So it's better.
Yeah. What do
It's
you
much
think what do you think has worked what do you think has made all the difference for you? Has it been the yoga and like using that in conjunction
Yeah,
with
I
the
mean,
adjustments and
yeah, I'd say, to be honest, the biggest thing, first of all, I don't care how functional or whatever you are, your perception, your mindset, your ability to
mm,
contextualize things is the number one thing. Like it's basically like if you're wearing a tinted glass, like no matter what you look through, it's going to be the red or the blue or whatever your tint is. However, so for me, I have rose tinted glasses, obviously at this point, and so when I'm looking at my situation about what is better or worse or whatever, it's being viewed through that lens, and that lens is what I've been practicing for years, which is the lens of gratitude, the lens of appreciation, the lens of understanding that my body is perfect and everything about life is perfect. And if I can't see that, then I need to clean my glasses off and look at it again because that's the ultimate truth for me. And so, but honestly, if I were to say the number one thing that has gotten me to the point of the most pain free I've ever been, it's through
mm,
strength training and learning
mm,
about how to use kettlebells, how to use the barbell properly, how to approach the different weak points or the opportunistic points I have with the fascial stretching, the fascial strengthening systems that I've been specializing in as well. But I think ultimately, strength is the most important thing, period. And unfortunately, a lot of people get scared away from it because they don't know better. And I mean, I was told by doctors, never deadlift, never bench press, never do this because I had my shoulder surgery, I had my back injury. And again, it's progressive overloading, it's dosing it appropriately, it's being honest with how good you are at a skill and recognizing strength is a skill. You have to develop it over time. And if you want to be resilient, you have to be dedicated and being, open to the fact that at some point, if you're pushing yourself to failure, that failure sometimes comes with consequences. And that's
mm,
fine. You just have to be adaptive, learn, make sure you don't break yourself entirely. And even if you do, you're starting a new journey and you have to start back to wherever you need to in order to get yourself back to where you were and beyond.
mm-hmm. In Ayurveda, the word for strength is bala, Sanskrit
Oh,
word, bala, B-A-L-A, bala.
yeah.
And we understand that there's different types of strength. There's the inherent strength of the individual, and then there's the created strength
Yeah.
through practices, through rightful living.
Mm,
So I can already tell that you're a Pitta Kappa. I don't know if you knew that. You probably knew that. You know
yeah.
that, right?
I've been told
You're
that.
Pitta Kappa. Like, I don't need to take your pulse. I don't even need to look at your tongue. I know you well enough. I can also look at just your face, the way you speak, and the way you approach life, and how that innate strength is only that of a Pitta Kappa.
Mm, yeah. I mean, it's an honor to be a Pitta Kappa.
It is. You're so lucky. I'm not. I'm a Pitta Vata. But I mean, we need all, obviously nature calls for so many different, what is life? It's just consciousness wanting to know itself in all these different bodies and all these different personalities and all these different struggles and strifes, which at the end of the day, many of ours are so much more parallel and similar than I think we could ever realize. It
Yeah.
just looks different. The specifics might be a little bit different, but we will all have pain and suffering and loss, and we all have to figure out how to navigate all of that, and hopefully learn how to do all of that in a conscious way and build our strength for hopefully the next incarnation, which we pick up where we left off in the past life and move even closer toward freedom, hopefully, or the yoga, the joining back with all, because we ventured out, consciousness ventured out and began to separate or give us the illusion that we're separate. And now it's a matter of remembering that we are all one, that the healer is within us all along. There's no magic pill. There's no uh mistake. Like, you weren't, nothing was wrong when, like, you go back in your life and you think, oh, if only I didn't get that injury, or God, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure you've had moments in your life when you've had really bad pain,
Sure.
bouts of it, and just been like beating yourself up about, if I had only been wearing a helmet, or had I only just, like, why did I have to have such an extreme love of difficult sports, or like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, think like wrestling, of course, it had to be wrestling. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Um, but it's your story, and it's given you these powers, Samarpan. I know you know that. Um, that you have now this gift of being able to articulate your experience, and articulate so many other people's experience, and transcribe it in a way that marries all the different layers of a human being's experience, which is the physical. You're an anatomical master. You know all the parts.
Yeah.
You've studied them. You can probably recite them backwards and forwards.
Mhm.
And now you have this indigenous texture to you, this beautiful connection to these ancient tribes in the Amazon. And you've had experiences with, just even with the retreat that you went to recently.
Mhm.
And I'll open the floor if you want to talk a bit about that too. But I know that you've just, the experiences you've had, whether you want to label them good or bad. I know you wouldn't, because you're very, very elevated, and there is no such thing, and you are Samarpan Anand, so you have surrendered.
Sure.
You are surrendered bliss. But you know, when we all look back on our lives and we realize that actually it was the moments that we thought were going to break us
Mhm.
that made us this strong, refined, articulate, capable, proficient master of fill in the blank. But
Yeah.
above all, it's being the master of yourself.
Mhm.
And when you, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I love where you're going with it,
yeah,
and
I'm just vibing off of your vibes. But
yeah, I totally agree. It's you know, if there's anything that I really really have come to understand is that like, um, and this again this kind of ties in what I'm learning from indigenous people, which I'm just barely scratching the surface of that entire world. It's like I am definitely still very much a student of life and will continue to be. There is something about our innate human essence that we have lost due to our desire to be comfortable. And it's the process of being domesticated, and whenever we talk about colonization, all that, like, I'm not in the super woke camp of like, I understand that life has happened and we are where we are. But the biggest thing is that we are colonized. We are domesticated people. We are animals. We are beings that are on this earth to engage with the forces of life, to engage with the elements, the earth, water, air, sky, everything, fire. It's got to be in your life. And if you don't have that, you are somewhat disconnected from the actual primal reality in which we exist. And the indigenous people, the Yanomami people who I've gotten the chance to be working with, where we're developing, the whole project is that I went down to the Amazon to take a sabbatical, and this tribe, the Yanomami, the leader of the Yanomami people on the northwestern side of the Amazon in Brazil, asked me to help create strategic solutions to malnutrition, because they are now being introduced to the processed colonized world, not by choice, but it's happening, and they want to understand how to navigate it. And what it's caused me to do is reflect on how am I able to embody ancestral concepts and practices, and if I can't live out in nature, how can I replicate it, and how can I, because working out is replicating normal movement patterns that we used to do all the time, picking up stuff and putting it down and carrying things, and agricultural practices, hunting, running, jumping. You have to be able to do that. And if you don't use it, you lose it. And if you start eating in a way that is domesticated, processed, and overly saturated this and that or whatever, you're going to be sick. And if you
Mm.
have a mentality that is fragile and that's weak, that you never expose yourself to pushing yourself to your limits. Like I'm about to go right after this to get in the sauna for 45 minutes. And that every time takes me to my edge. I always think I'm going to quit, and I never let myself, but it's like I feel like I'm going to die in there. And if you
Infrared?
don't, no, no, infrared's a joke. Yeah, that's a whole
What
nother
are,
thing.
what are you doing?
Traditional sauna with the hot rocks and pouring the water on it. Yeah,
Okay,
infrared
so it's
is
the
more.
dry.
Yeah,
You're
infrared.
not a fan of infrared.
No, it's like a heat lamp. That's all it is. They just marketed it really well, and I know people might hate me for that, but I did a whole training on the sauna, the art, the understanding of the science, the heat shock proteins, all the different cofactors and enzymes that get produced from, because it's different mechanisms. This is light penetrating you. It's a spectrum of UV versus actual heat from the outside. It's totally different
Mm.
mechanisms biologically, physiologically, all that stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, we can have a whole another
We
podcast about that.
will. We'll talk about the all the saunas on
Yeah,
the market next podcast.
yeah,
I'm
that's
a
that.
big lover of saunas. This is a very interesting topic for me.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's basically getting to the essence of, can you push yourself? Can you catalyze? Can you get to your edge in all aspects of yourself every day to some point? You know, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever it is, through your career, like pushing yourself. And it's not out of a desire to like validate your worth or prove that you're somehow good enough to be loved or whatever. It's because you are here and you're fulfilling your dharma, you are fulfilling your purpose, and you recognize the beauty of life. And it's okay to forget it every once in a while, but if you don't have practices built into your day-to-day existence that remind you of your primal essence, that remind you of the aspects of you that are eternal, that are connected to all things, then of course you're going to lose yourself in the world and you're going to suffer.
Mm.
And again, that's perfect in its own way, because it's the forgetting that makes the remembering that much more significant and more profound whenever it happens.
Oh, I love it. Poetry. It's all poetry. You were starting to go a little bit into nutrition, and there was a question I wanted to ask you about the role of
Yeah,
nutrition and lifestyle in chiropractic care, because it's
sure.
huge in Ayurvedic medicine. I mean, we really look at the entire life of a person. We don't just give them some Ayurvedic herbs to take. We look at what they're eating, when they're sleeping, what exercises they're doing, and obviously chiropractic is huge about stretching and alignment. And of
Yeah,
course, chiro yoga, I would imagine you'd be prescribing people different postures to do at certain times of day
yep.
in certain repetitions and things like this. But
Hmm.
I am so curious to know about how you work with nutrition and
Yeah,
how that plays a role in your practice.
yeah. I mean, if I were to summarize it, like I know we're like already past an hour, so I don't know how much
Yeah,
time.
108. 10808. Yeah, as soon as you do realize that you asked that question at 10808.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So this can
uh,
be we can end off on this one, and then next
yeah. Well, I
episode we
mean,
can.
yeah, I can leave a little, like, I guess, teaser for people, but if you were to look at generically what I like and have discovered through my own processes, especially whenever it comes to returning to ancestral and indigenous principles, the teachings of Weston A. Price, he was a doctor of dentistry back in the early turn of the 19th, or the early, turn of the 20th century. It's like early 1900s. And he basically identified that, people's teeth were falling out of their heads. Like, this is peak of the industrial revolution. People have been, basically put in cities at this point eating processed foods, and people were starting to suffer from our culture's perspective. And so he went around the world and he studied the different indigenous populations that were still in existence, those that were pre-colonized, in the middle of being colonized, and post-colonized. And he basically, through the process of doing this big overall like meta-analysis of all these ancestral ways of living, which you could kind of extrapolate and say that we all on some level did this at some point before we became domesticated.
Mhm.
He identified 13 archetypical indigenous diets, and they were all centered around healthy raised animal meats. They would always have some sort of sacred food like organ meats or honey, and then they typically have some sort of fruit that was seasonal, and they'd have maybe a very, very few, if any, vegetables. And so, which
Interesting.
is interesting, yeah, because a lot of people think that you should eat a salad every day, and I
Fiber.
think
Yeah.
yeah, and fiber, the context of fiber is changing, and cholesterol, the understanding of that's changing. So, archetypically speaking, I promote an ancestral diet, and everyone's ancestry is different. But again, you have to find whole food, healthy raised animals, healthy sources of organic, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's if you want to look into something, Weston A. Price, that's a whole world to dive into.
Something we can always agree on is that food is medicine,
Of course,
you know.
yeah.
And your last statement about you have to look into your own ancestry, it's another kind of way of saying it in Ayurveda, which is look at your prakriti, look at your true nature.
Hmm.
And so again, it's teaching people these words, these concepts, and like you said, partnering with them. I love that the words that you're using are very, they feel very on point and new. I mean, I've never heard of a doctor patient relationship, termed that way. And moving
Hmm.
forward, I think I might start using that myself, because it
Yeah.
absolutely, I do feel like I always tell my patients, I'm going to be holding your hand, but I'm leading you back home to yourself. I mean, I'm not taking you somewhere outside of yourself. I'm going to hold your hand when it gets scary, to meet the parts of yourself in the inside of the places that you've been avoiding or that you didn't realize were there. And
Yeah.
I promise you, you're safe. And that is a gift, right? Like we're all doing it, and it's like we all have different ways of saying it, but we're all doing very similar work. And I just love hearing about the overlaps between your work and my work, and all the different work that all the different doctors are doing around the world. I think it's incredible, and I just want to keep watching all the work that you continue to do, because I know we're both in it for the long run, and we are on the dharmic path, and we're in the same community, and I'm just so grateful that I met you, that you're in my field of reality, that in this time and place that we've been able to connect. And you're such a gift to the world. You regardless of the work that you do, I mean, just your spirit, your generosity, your a gift. You really are. And so thank you for sharing your energy with me and the podcast listeners. And yeah, just all the gratitude. And I hope I get to see you soon. And I know if I do, you'll give me the best spinal adjustment ever. You're so good.
Uh,
So, so good. And you're the best yoga teacher too.
Thank you, Sasha. I really
Yeah.
do appreciate you. And yeah, I think to summarize everything you just said, we're all just walking each other home, like Ramdas would say. And, if we can just remember that we're not fragile, we're meant to engage in this world. And, if you forget where you are, you can always remember, you're always on the path. You can't fall off it. It's just impossible. So, you'll continue to attract all the things that you need. Just keep believing that it's possible, and that you can heal, and that you can get better, and you can thrive, and you can have a beautiful life. And people like us, and much more experienced people than I, can come into your field and come in and help, and again, it's just like we're only coming from our own perspectives of having done it ourselves. And if one ideology doesn't resonate with you, then there's something else that does, and it's a beautiful discovery. I think healing has been made into a burden versus an opportunity. And if I looked
Mm,
at my healing process that way, then I would just be bitter, because how could you not be if you hurt this bad for so long? And then you have these breakthroughs, and you have these realizations, and you see how the pain was just a beautiful guide. It was the only thing that would have driven you to stop, just long enough to be able to be honest with yourself. And yeah, and it's beautiful. I'm so happy and so proud of you to see how far you've come in your journey. And being a nomad isn't easy. I know how that goes.
my
And
gosh. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
It's
Yeah,
a,
I mean, the journey is long, you know? It's not for the faint of heart. So I do have enough inherent bala. Now we know that word.
yeah.
Inherent strength of mind and body, thankfully. And I do have a yoga practice. So I hold myself in difficult postures and I breathe through them, and I do the cold, the
Good.
practice of being in the cold and breathing through that. And again, I love what you said about comfort being, you know, something that we really need to unlearn as the goal of life. It's not what it's about. It's never been about getting more comfortable. It's about, sure, we're a very adaptable species, and of course we want to survive all these different environmental changes, and things are moving real fast now, changing real fast for us in our environment. But um, yeah, I think it's just important to remember that the most beautiful aspects of life are when you're not comfortable, and when you find yourself able to go through difficult things such as living nomadically, or I mean, you name it. I don't know. Just throw some difficult thing. It could be as easy as, I don't know, traffic. Like that's a really, really common one that people have a tough time, or just being in the car in general and on the road with all these different, you know, kind of nutty drivers. But when you find yourself in postures, whether it's in yoga or positions like being in a really long line at the post office or being in traffic, and you start noticing, wow, this is a lot easier than it used to be because I'm a different person now
Yeah.
because of what I've realized about myself and about life. And like you're always saying, it's all happening perfectly, unfolding perfectly. That's when you realize the importance of the fact that you have been through some hard shit,
Yeah.
and it justifies it in that moment when you can actually take a deep diaphragmatic breath in a position that you used to be like hyperventilating.
Hmm.
that that's the growth marker for you. You can really see it in that moment. Wow, I've come a long way.
Yeah. And you're what you're essentially doing is you're microdosing stressful situations and challenges. I mean, sauna is microdosing a very intense challenge. Ice baths, working out is simulating extreme physical challenge. And if you don't microdose stressful events, then whenever the macro dose of life comes at you and just hits you right in the face, and you have never done any gentle exposure with intention, because you are controlling it. Every time you go to the gym, you signed up for it. Every time you step in a sauna, you knew that it was coming. You could at least prepare yourself, so you're building up the resilience and the mechanisms in your body to be able to turn on and be ready for that. But if you never do that in your own way in a controlled setting, it's going to happen to you no matter what. And I've had patients that, I've told them, like, listen, if you don't microdose this kind of level of stress now, it's going to come at some point. And I pray that it never does, because I would love for everyone to be comfortable. And I believe that we should pursue discomfort in the essence of being able to appreciate our comfort even more. But at the end of the day, you have to put it in there. And then, whenever you meditate, you're microdosing eternity. Become familiar with
Hmm.
eternity. Find it in every aspect of yourself, and continue to build in the reminders through your life. Rituals are magic, rituals of getting up and doing your practice, rituals of having a moment before you eat to remember how grateful you are, rituals of every time you do something, you have something that reminds you, you never forget. And in between the rituals is whenever you can see how long that can last, and the timing of you to return back to your center, the timing of how long it takes for you to get back and remember, oh, this is perfect. That's where you can measurably see how much you're improving. And it's not even about the measurements, it's just about the journey. But it's interesting to see how you track over time, and the postures that used to freak you out, are they're okay. Being in the sauna for almost an hour, it's okay. You know what I mean? There's a nuance to it all, and you keep meeting yourself in different ways, and until you bring yourself to your edge, you don't know how you're going to be at your edge. And some people, it's surprising to see how they'll act, and they never know it.
So many nuggets of goodness that you just dropped. I feel like that's a good place to leave it.
Yeah.
Wow. I hope you're drinking a lot of water before and after those saunas, though. Good. I see. Yeah. I have my water and my tea right here, which I have not been drinking this whole episode, but
Yeah.
I'm going to be definitely drinking a lot of water now. Thank you so much. This was so perfect.
Yeah, it's a
So
pleasure, Sasha.
perfect.
I hope you get to come out to Florida sometime, and yeah, we get to continue this conversation in person.
I would love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to Ojas Oasis with Sasha Brashadsky. To learn more about Ayurvedic healing, please visit ojasoasis.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, have your smile.